This is our league, and this is your league. Broadcasting from the 55-yard line in Japan to the shores of the Great White North and everywhere around the world on Gridiron America Radio and the Sports History Network.
Welcome to From the 55-Yard Line, another beta test, this time with, as you can see, right there, on StreamYard. And we've got, for those of you who are listening, you can watch this video over at Gridiron America on YouTube, and the link will be in the liner notes of the show. So it is, again, last week we had Howie Mooney sitting down with us talking. Well, Howie is back, and Dave and I, and there's a whole discussion that we did not have, and that is CFL free agency. So last week, Howie took a whole bunch of notes that we never got to. So we're gonna get to his notes today, and we're gonna talk everything free agency and go from there. Hey, is there an echo? I thought I heard an echo.
I heard something
on my end. Yeah,
I heard something too. It sounded like dogs trying to scratch through a door or something.
Okay. And Dave?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. You didn't hear anything. Okay. All right. So maybe it's just again we're test driving new software, but maybe the StreamYard thing will work. So, but we'll see afterwards and go from there. So anyway, without further ado, and with me rambling here, Howie, let's talk free agency, man. Where do we start with CFL free agency?
Well, I guess the latest news is the biggest news. Tim White was about the highest priced free agent that was out there, and he re-signed with Hamilton. He was asking in the neighborhood apparently of $300,000 a year. He was the leading receiver in terms of yardage last year in the CFL, and there's a great article on CFL.ca by Don Landry, and he mentioned in there that there was one other team that was interested in White, and that was Ottawa. And I messaged Don to find out how close Ottawa may have been in terms of the negotiations there, but he hasn't got back to me at the time of this recording. So Tim White back in Hamilton, and that's about the biggest news that I've seen so far. I believe the free agent period is coming to a pretty big close now, or pretty soon anyway. But Tim White in Hamilton, back in Hamilton, a whole bunch of other things going on as well at the same time. But just wondering what you guys think of that.
Dave?
I mean, I'm really curious at the end of the day what he signed for.
I'd like to know that too.
I think at some point, because the one thing I've been reading about and listening to is this whole issue about marketing money. You have the hard cap, and then you have this floor of marketing money that doesn't seem to have a cap. So I'm curious as to see how free agency ends up with that, with some of the big names, and how with so many players changing teams, like how that came into play, like how did that factor in?
Well, you look at a guy like Adarius Pickett, who was in Toronto for a long time, and a great linebacker, and he got permission to leave. I mean, his contract was up, but he got permission to go to Ottawa. And they called it a gentleman's agreement, which I found kind of interesting because, I know that with the cap and everything like that Toronto was getting rid of a bunch of people. AJ Ouellette went out to Saskatchewan, which shocked me. I loved AJ Ouellette as a running back and as a fullback. He's kind of a miniature version of Jerome Bettis, I thought anyway. But especially running straight ahead, he's a hard guy to bring down. He's like a bowling ball. But it just seemed like Toronto was going to let him go, and they had no problem with that, and surprised the heck out of me. So for them to lose Adarius Pickett, and then to lose AJ Ouellette, and then to sign Lirim Hajrullahu, who had been in the CFL for a while previously, then went down to the NFL, played with about 5 or 6 different teams there. And now he's back in the CFL with Toronto. They let Boris Beatty go, who had just an amazing leg. He could kick one from 60. It didn't seem with any problem. And now Boris Beatty's gone. I think he's in the West. I've got to look that up where he is, where he re-signed, where he signed. But Boris Beatty gone, who was a real fan favorite in Toronto as well.
Yeah.
As was AJ Ouellette. I mean, a lot of people were angry in Toronto at Pinball Clemens, which never happens. Pinball Clemens is just the
I've never heard a bad word about him.
Never. And I mean, I met him a couple of years ago at a game, and just he's one of those people. And I've said this a number of times. He's one of those people that he makes you feel like he's happier to meet you than you are to meet him when you meet him. And that's there's a small group of people they're in that group. Jean Beliveau was in that group. Johnny Bauer was in that group. Walter Gretzky was in that group. But Pinball's in that group as well. So for some Toronto fans to turn on Pinball was just a shock to me as well.
So I guess the question I have off of that, because then just looking at the roster changes, looking at the players who are still available and looking out there, and I don't mean to, if I'm jumping ahead with this question, but I'm just curious. Do you think there was a concerted effort in Toronto to maybe cut some payroll, but maybe then try and sign like a Lucky Whitehead to fill some gaps? Like I'm trying to think of, if they released the fan favorite kicker, but probably got a cheaper kicker. They released a fan favorite running back and got a cheaper running back who's good. I mean, Kadeem Carey, he's a very good running back. Got me lots of points in fantasy football over the years. It just seems like they've downgraded in salary on positions to seems like almost put themselves in a position to make one more strike, if possible. Just curiosity. Yeah.
I think that their goal, one of their priorities in the offseason was to re-sign Chad Kelly at quarterback, and then also to strengthen their offensive line. And I believe that like you said, Kadeem Carey's not a bad running back. He's a pretty good running back, period. He's a guy that a lot of teams would love to have. But to me, AJ Ouellette was a guy I thought he's young. He's still got a bunch of good years left. Why not keep him? But I guess they thought otherwise.
I agree. And Saskatchewan got a deal. I mean, that was such a. I'm just thinking, I was shocked when I heard that, because I didn't think he was going anywhere. It just seems like he was a perfect fit for the Argos for years and years to come.
Absolutely. And then you look at the Argos, they lost Trayvon Tate, one of their offensive linemen, to Calgary. Yep. A couple other guys as well, on the defense. But to me, seeing Boris Beatty go and the outcry after he left, and then the outcry after Ouellette left, that it struck me. It just really did. It struck me intensely.
Well, I think the big thing was you just didn't hear anything. You didn't hear anything towards the end of the season. You heard nothing during the off season of, we're going to release him. Like, you just did not hear anything. And all of a sudden, boom, release. And then boom, all of a sudden it was just out of nowhere.
Yeah. It absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It absolutely was. I look at Ottawa though, and I mean, having grown up with Ottawa football as a kid, and having been in the building at BMO Field in Toronto in 2016 to see Ottawa win the Grey Cup. My hope, and you never know how this is. I mean, you could win free agency, but you can be killed in the regular season the following year. There's no correlation between one and the other. But I hope that Ottawa strengthened their lineup. I mean, as we all know in football, everything emanates from the line of scrimmage out. And if you have a good offensive line, a line that can block for the run and block for the pass, then you can pretty much do anything you want. But I mean, Ottawa's offensive line has been porous over the last few years, and I'm hoping as an Ottawa fan, that their offensive line is strong enough that it can lead them to a postseason berth anyway.
Well, right off the bat, you have a really good quarterback discussion on who's going to start. Like, right, they're not going to go right up till June 13th. Like, it's going to be right up until that morning.
And I mean, the way that training camps work in the CFL, you never know who's going to last and who's not going to last.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go back years and years and years, and every year there seems to be a surprise guy that's packing all of his stuff into a green garbage bag, partway through camp or 2/3 of the way through camp and getting cut. A guy that everybody in the team loves, and we see that every year on every team.
And it goes to show you just how different the Canadian game is too, because you get a lot of kids. I mean, all of us are old enough now; we can call them kids from down in the States that think, "Oh, I can tear up this league," and then they go up and they, for whatever reason, just completely, because it's a completely different game compared to what they're used to playing. And I don't know if it's because the field's wider, longer, 3 downs. I mean, I don't think it's the food. I don't think it's the culture. I don't think it. It's always boggled my mind. When you see that, you see guys that were like can't miss, and I mean, we can go through the list of names that have come up from the States to Canada that have just never made it. So,
now, question for Howie.
Yes,
especially quarterbacks. How long do you think it really takes for a quarterback who's coming from the States, played college football, then signs or comes up to CFL to really understand the throws, understand the field, the width, and getting that ball outside? It's such a different throw that you see so many quarterbacks just struggle with that, even who have strong arms.
It differs per guy. I mean, every guy's different. You look at a guy like your friend who played in Edmonton, a great quarterback. Why am I having a brain cramp now? But anyway, I think of J.C. Watts. When J.C. Watts came up from Oklahoma, J.C. Watts ran the run, the option basically down there in college. He came up and was able to throw. He wanted to prove to everybody that he could throw the ball, and he was able to. At the same time, you had Vince Ferragamo come up, and Vince Ferragamo had taken the LA Rams to the Super Bowl, 2 years or a year and a half earlier. Got to Montreal, could not handle the intricacies of the Canadian game at all. Couldn't handle the wider field. He couldn't handle the 12th man. He couldn't handle the yard off the line of scrimmage. He couldn't handle the motion. None of it ever resonated with him. And he ended up going back to the NFL and playing there. But he just could not get the CFL game whatsoever. Struggled all that 81 season while you had a first-year guy in J.C. Watts come up and lead Ottawa to the Grey Cup. And they should have won the game. I mean, we're going back more than 40 years now, and it still resonates. The double interference call on Tony Gabriel, where both guys were penalized at the same time. Never been called before, never been called since. The referee who made the call that penalty, that was his last game working in the CFL. He was kicked upstairs and never seen on a field again. But you talk about that, and it David differs quarterback by quarterback by quarterback. Matt Dunnigan was able to absorb it. Damon Allen was able to absorb it, but a lot of other guys come up and they just can't. And I don't know why that is. I don't want to say it's between the ears, because that's not fair. To be a quarterback at any level, you have to have it between the ears.
Right.
But just to get to all of a sudden, you've got 12 men on the field. You've got your offensive line, your 5 men, but then you've got an array of receivers. You've got slot receivers. You've got wide receivers. You've got guys in the backfield.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot of movement.
Yes.
Motion everywhere.
Yes. And some guys can handle it, and some guys just can't. And I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but that's about the best answer that I can think of.
Perfect, because I've seen so many different people respond, like how that works, and it's really, I always look for a better voice than myself, because I've seen it, but you've seen and witnessed a lot more than I have.
I think of guys. Sorry, I was going to say I think of guys in the CFL that were quarterbacks in the CFL. I mean, you look at Dieter Brock, who played for years in Winnipeg. And
I was just going to ask you about him.
Yeah, Dieter Brock then went down to L.A. and Georgia Frontiere loved him, and played with the Rams for a while and did well there. Did okay there. Jeff
he
Garcia,
did great
until
he did great until he got to that 85 NFC Championship, and literally got mugged by the Bears defense.
Yes. Well, I mean, everybody got mugged by the Bears defense though that year.
Yes. Warren Moon.
Warren Moon is a great example, a guy who was spectacular in
Yes.
Edmonton. But I recall that 81 Grey Cup too, where he just couldn't get things going in that first half. Ottawa's defense, they gave the appearance of blitzing, and then they would hold their linebackers back. And a buddy of mine, Rick Sovieta, was a linebacker for Ottawa, he picked off a Warren Moon pass in the first half. And I asked him about it, years later, and he says, "Howie, I got lucky." He says, "Moon threw the ball so hard that it stuck in my face mask, and I just couldn't." But Rick was such a wonderful guy, such a modest guy. And if you go back and look at the tape, because it's on YouTube, you can find it. He made a great play on it. He knocked it out of the air. It hung there for a second. He grabbed it and didn't want to make any mistakes with it, so he just fell down to the ground. But he made a great play on it. It didn't stick in his face mask. But Rick was such a wonderful, wonderful guy.
And then there's Joe Cap.
Joe Cap, yeah, another one. Absolutely. I mean, you look at Doug Flutie too. Doug Flutie, the hard time that he had in the NFL because he wasn't 6'5", and comes up to the CFL, and it has the mobility that is such a plus in the Canadian game with the wider field. And unless there's a spy on him all the time, he's going to be able to do whatever he wants, and he did in the CFL, and then went back down to the NFL and was just had the biggest steal job of anybody when he wasn't allowed to play in that last playoff game, just in Buffalo, everybody up here in Canada was cheering, became Buffalo fans, when he went back down there. And then I can't remember which Johnson it was that was the other quarterback in Buffalo at the time, but he went in there and did nothing. Rob Johnson. Thank you. I'm sorry, Dave. I should have asked you right away.
We don't talk about that game because it was a forward lateral.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That is correct.
But I digress.
And then lastly, just about going back to the Joe Cap thing. Joe Cap is one of my favorite trivia questions. Who is the only quarterback ever to win an NFL and CFL title?
Yeah, and who was the only coach to win an NFL? No, sorry, and he didn't win an NFL title, but Bud Grant.
Bud Grant won an NFL title.
NFC.
No, they were still the NFL. That was the last year before the merger.
You're right. My mistake.
Yeah. And it's funny with that because anytime I would toss that out on social media, it's like throwing meat. Especially it's like throwing meat out to the pack of wolves. That was it. No. The trophy said NFL title.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
So hey, I digress.
That's okay.
So back to free agency. So what other moves did we have that surprised you for where we're currently at with the free agency?
Well, how about you, Dave? What move surprised you?
The basically two guys from Toronto were the biggest surprise. Like I said, I just not see them, and I guess my next would be. I wasn't looking at Winnipeg to make splashes, but how quiet they were. That surprised me.
For me, I wrote down on my one of their priorities was to get Brady Oliveira and Schoen locked up, and they did that.
True.
They did both guys, and what they did too by signing Dalton Schoen to the amount that they did, they kind of lowered the market for a guy like Tim White when it came time for Tim White to sign. Hamilton said, "Well, look what Schoen just signed for. We can't give you $300,000. We'll give you, X." But it wasn't the $300,000 that he was looking for.
And I guess I never looked at those two. I guess I was looking at those two as automatic re-signs. I really didn't think Winnipeg was going to let. I would, I guess, venture to say I see Winnipeg lose somebody else than lose those two guys when it came time to focus on who to re-sign. And then who to let go. I mean, it's just, I guess that was just the way I thought.
No, I get that. And I don't know if you've heard this, Dave or Greg, but some of the rumors that were coming out over the last month or so, like Mike O'Shea being lured to coach in the NFL, which I thought that was kind of weird.
I thought that was weird too.
But you know what? Nothing would surprise me. I mean, I'm an old man now. Nothing would surprise me, but I think in the back of my mind, I would feel kind of surprised or betrayed or something if Mike O'Shea was to leave the CFL. He's just one of those guys.
We wonder if I don't know if you can do this, but I can see him as one of the people the CFL wouldn't let leave. You can't go.
Well, but you know what though? There are owners in the NFL. Not a lot, but there are some that look at the CFL as kind of a proving ground. And I mean, Mike O'Shea, if anybody's proved himself in the CFL, it's Mike O'Shea.
But unfortunately, with the CFL, the last CFL coach that came down was Mark Trestman, and he was two years and done with the Bears. And to me, I mean, watching that whole thing unfold in Chicago, the way the talk was, the CFL was completely dismissed when he got hired, and the reputation of the CFL only got worse because of his poor performance. So then it makes me wonder, because of Mark Trestman, do CFL coaches have a chance now? Do NFL owners, are they even looking at the CFL for potential coaches?
When I think of Mark Trestman, though, Greg, when I look at him, how much of the record, coupled with his very quiet demeanor, combined to make people dismiss the CFL and Mark Trestman the way that they did?
And I think that's it. I don't, his demeanor, the way he approached the game. I mean, we clearly everybody, he won a championship. Hell, he went back and won another championship afterwards. Yeah. So, but then again, too, let's be honest with you, it's the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
And that whole franchise is just nothing but dysfunction, as we, God, I've lost count how many coaches have come and gone since he got let go.
Side question right here. What does Chicago do at the draft this year?
Well, I don't know. I would actually defer to my friend John Gunning over at the Gridiron Japan podcast, because he's even though he's from Ireland, he's a bigger Bears fan than me. He's more kind of tuned into that than I am. Listen, I've been watching the Bears for 50 years now. They know how to screw things up. And I'm just expecting that, hell, they traded up for Mitch Trubisky and passed on Patrick Mahomes. That's all you have to know. That's really all you have to know about this franchise. My Cardinals, not much better. Though I still say, if Kyler Murray flames out, he's going to the CFL, because he's built for the CFL.
Yes, but I think that now a lot of NFL GMs and a lot of NFL coaches are a lot more open to a Kyler Murray style or Lamar style of quarterback than they ever have been in the past.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's they say it's gotten to the point now, and you saying that, they say it all the time now, it seems like, on TV. They're always mentioning how the NFL has become much more like the CFL in terms of just the style of play, the wideouts, and there's that. Nobody has a fullback anymore. I mean, you've got really one or two guys pounding the ball, but the fullback's pretty much disappeared. So, but the NFL, their style of play now, it's all, you look at it and going, oh yeah, they do. They've been doing this for years in the CFL.
Well, the running back on a second or third contract is disappearing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You look at Saquon, and Saquon's looking around for a team now, and I don't know what to say. I mean, it's terrible, but the game has changed so much too. And I don't want. There are clouds out there, and I don't want to start yelling at them because I'm, but that's how I feel right now. Bemoaning the fact that running backs aren't as important as they used to be. I might as well be an old man yelling at clouds.
Yeah. It's okay though. I mean, that era of football that we grew up with, I mean, let's face it, it's gone. But it's probably gone for all the right reasons, because let's face it. You look at the injuries these guys went through, the head, just everything. Guys dying young. Your Dave Duersons. The game is a lot. It's still a brutal game, but it's become safer, and at least hopefully these kids are going to live longer because of the fact that the style of play has changed.
Well, and I will also jump in and say I think the quality of the athlete is just it's grown leaps and bounds. Like, it's running back committee now because you need that fresh running back on every single play. You can't ride a Walter Payton for 35 carries a game or Otis Anderson or name that running back who'd get 35 carries a game. It just doesn't. You want 10, 12 rushes, 15, next guy up, and just keep rotating players in, because that's how thin the margin of error now is in the NFL.
But then you'll hear individual guys saying, I need to touch the ball 20 times a game in order to feel like I'm in the game.
Yep. Yeah.
And Barry Sanders is my guy, by the way.
Yeah, went through a whole season, went through a couple seasons with Stephon Diggs here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
He wants somebody and give it to him. Like he is a great wide receiver, and I can understand when you have a lot of weapons and you have Josh Allen who's going to run 10, 15 times a game. That's 10 or 15 less passes. So it's understand completely. And he just came out the other day and said he wanted to retire as a Bill. So that was nice to hear him say. But it's just changed. It's not the style of going back, and I'm going to date myself here with Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, and Andre Reed. Those are the three pegs of the Bills' offense for a decade. And then you have you wheel in James Lofton or a Don Beebe here and there, and you get changeable tight ends. But those three guys were there the entire time.
Yeah. It's just and Dave, it's funny because you mentioned
that used to be the standard thing is for a team to have a three-headed monster.
Yes.
Everybody had the three-headed monster. In Dallas, you
Cowboys?
had Aikman, you had Michael Irvin and my brain's gone today. But you know who I'm talking about.
And
Emmett Smith.
And it's funny too, because we're sitting here talking about guys of yesteryear, and I just dawned on me as we're standing, like, Dave's the youngest of the group here, so his frame of reference.
Not by that much.
And then I'm thinking back with the Steelers of the 70s, you had, your three-headed monster. Nobody gives credit to Terry Bradshaw for winning for winning all those, for winning 4 Super Bowls. But he had Franco Harris and Rocky Bleier in that backfield, and then he had Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. So and you can even say with the Cowboys too. I mean, with Staubach, Tony Dorsett in the backfield, and then he can go. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just so hard to I look at Terry Bradshaw's stats. Two of the 4 Super Bowls he won, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns during the season. I get it, but it was the passing game was a whole different animal. In the 70s and in the early 80s.
We're going down another tangent, but I mean, when people discount Joe Namath, it just drives me crazy because he didn't have the numbers that you'd see, the video game numbers you'd see today, but at the same time, as we've said, it was a different game in the 60s and in the early 70s than it is today. It's not the same. It's not as quarterback friendly. It's not as receiver friendly back then as it is now.
Yeah. It's and that's the thing now. But now we're in an era where just talking about Joe Namath's impact, the cultural impact.
Yeah,
and I think we're getting back to that now, where I know there's a lot of celebrity going on with football, and I think like with Mahomes and the Chiefs, with Travis Kelce, having that pizzazz, having that celebrity thing is a good thing, because for old guys like us, it keeps that fan base young. And so, Howie, let me ask you, with the CFL, where do you think we're at with the CFL with getting younger fans? Are you up there? Are people talking more about the CFL now than they were a few years ago? Because this has been going around and around for years, just
It
talking about
has
the aging
been,
out of
and
the
I think
fan base.
it depends on what city you're in. But what I've noticed too is, I want to say the last 25 years in Quebec, football has really, really gained a stronghold there. And I'm really, really happy to see it. I mean, you've got Laval University in there in Quebec, and I think they're called the Rouge et Or, the red and gold. And they've become a football factory, a CFL factory for players coming out of there. But it's not just there now. I mean, in Montreal, the Carabin, they've football, university football in Quebec has become so strong over the last 25 years. And I mean, you look at how crazy people were in Montreal last year for their Grey Cup champion Alouettes, and it makes me happy, and it makes me optimistic that it can happen in a whole bunch of other markets. I mean, you never had to worry about that in Saskatchewan because the whole province is green and white, and they love their Rough Riders. But in other places, it kind of goes up and down. I mean, even Edmonton back 40 years ago, the Edmonton, if you had ever thought the Edmonton Eskimos would not draw 50,000 a game, you'd be crazy. And they built that stadium, Commonwealth Stadium, to hold 50-some thousand people. And now they have trouble filling just the lower part of it. I believe that everything goes in waves. There are times when everything's popular and there are times when everything's not. And I mean, in the 90s, you had the league so strapped for money that they expanded into the United States. And, but I've lived long enough now to see a lot of things go up and a lot of things go down, and then a lot of things go up again and a lot of things go down again. And I'm a firm believer in that wave theory. When it comes to a lot of things, when it comes to sports, when it comes to individual players' performances, the waves can be narrower, the waves can be wider, but everything goes in waves like that. And I have no doubt that the CFL is on an upswing, in a lot of markets. And it's just a matter. I mean, in Toronto last year, we saw a wonderful upswing in terms of fan engagement last year, especially when it came to them getting into the playoffs. And I mean, they ended up losing to Montreal. But I believe that in Toronto, it's on the way up. And if you've got a healthy league in Toronto, you've got a healthy league. Or if you have a healthy team in Toronto, you've got a healthy league. And that's always been my belief. I mean, I think back to when Leo Cahill was coaching and general managing in Toronto in the late 60s and early 70s, and everybody hated Toronto. And attendance was up everywhere in the CFL because people would go to the parks, whatever city they were playing. And when the Argos would come to town, they would go to watch the games, to hate watch the Argos. People would scream at the Argos players and Leo Cahill because the team was built in his image. They were brash, they were cocky, but they were good. And I think that the league needs that. They need a team like they need a villain. They need a heel, like wrestling has heels and baby faces. The CFL needs a definite heel to make everybody else come out and scream at them.
And with the Grey Cup being in Vancouver this year, that's a perfect opportunity. I mean, that's another thing too that I don't think people are really talking about yet, but the opportunity there, because I mean, traditionally, the Grey Cup usually, to me, I mean, I have yet, since I've been watching the CFL, I have not seen a Grey Cup in Vancouver. Since I've been watching it via internet, via network TV in the States. So this is going to be the first that I can't even remember the last time Vancouver held a Grey Cup. Do you remember?
Off the top of my head, no, but I know that they have. But it's great to see. They have a beautiful. I mean, Vancouver's beautiful.
The stadium's been rebuilt because they rebuilt it for the. I mean, they redid it for the Olympics and everything. Yeah. But I think this is going to be a perfect opportunity for really with this Grey Cup in Vancouver, because you got a new owner in Vancouver who is bending over backwards to bring people into the stadium to get the fan interest going, and he's done a good job. I think this is going to be the year that the CFL really shines, especially on the international stage and hopefully and on the national stage with to increase fan interest.
I agree with you. And I think that the league needs more owners like him Just to get things rolling. I mean, I remember in Ottawa, and this doesn't have anything to do with the CFL, but it has something to do with the topic. Ottawa, their junior team, the junior hockey team, the 67s, they were kind of stagnant under the ownership of Howard Darwin and Earl Montagano, and they're both wonderful, wonderful people. But their idea of marketing was games on Sunday night at 7, be there, and that was it. And then Jeff Hunt came in and just started blowing the doors off marketing wise. And all of a sudden you had the arena was full again, with 5-figure attendances. And, not to say anything bad about Mr. Darwin or Mr. Montagano, because I mean, I remember those guys as being just amazing people, but sometimes you need that infusion of new blood just to get things feeling a different way again, and get the fans interested in something that they hadn't heard before. And like you said, in Vancouver and BC, it's happening. And I remember living in Vancouver and having a hard time getting guys on my hockey team to go, let's go see a football game, guys. No, but now it's a totally different story.
And there's another subject that on social media that came up, and I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but Milt Stegall brought up the subject of American expansion. That's exactly my my response when I saw that.
Yeah, I saw it, and I may have seen your post about it. I'm not sure, but when I read that, I was like, we went through that. I mean, I've talked to players, guys who played in the CFL at that time, and I mean, they loved the parties. They loved going to the American cities that they would have seen otherwise for the parties. And I mean, Kenny Verrera, who was a receiver in Hamilton and in Ottawa, he has friends that he made, in Baltimore and in different cities all over the U.S. where the CFL was played because of that. But Ken's the kind of guy, if you're his friend for a day, you're his friend forever. I mean, he's just a wonderful, wonderful guy, and Darren Joseph was another guy who played in the CFL at that time, and both of them agreed right away. Right, first thing, the CFL did that for the cash, and that was the only reason they did it. And I mean, unless they're doing it for the cash this time, which I hope, touch wood, that they're not just doing it for the cash, because I hope they don't just need the cash like that. I mean, I hope he's just talking through his hat.
Well, and that's kind of how I kind of read it too. But then he also, I forget if it was him or somebody else mentioned markets, and obviously the markets that they focused on were in Dave's neck of the woods up in upstate New York. Dave, what do you think?
No. I would love to see a few more teams, but I don't want to. Yeah, no, I just don't. I guess I just see the NFL just being too much of a juggernaut here. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the only cities that it could possibly work is if it was a city shunned by an NFL team, or a team that has some kind of history with the CFL. Because I just don't think you could go into just any market. If you went to Rochester, New York, and put a CFL team here, I just don't. It's just not.
What about a place like St. Louis?
Well, here's my take on that, because the United Football League obviously has their flag planted in St. Louis, and it is. I mean, for as big of a critic, everybody who's listened to our show knows I am of the UFL or the XFL. Really, to me, it's still it's the XFL, UFL, not so much the USFL, but that's a whole nother topic. But the UFL has got that's their flagship franchise. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with the UFL. I mean, a lot of promises have been made, a lot of hype's out there. In fact, so much hype that I've kind of had to turn it off on my social media feed because it's just become too much. But let's just say hypothetically that the UFL just falls flat, but the St. Louis franchise does well, kind of like with the old Cleveland Browns of the AAFC. Completely dominant team, attendance-wise, performance-wise, yet the league went away. if that happens, you're going to start seeing rumors and speculation about the Battlehawks joining the CFL. I don't think it's going to happen because, number one, you got to have a stadium that fits a CFL field, and St. Louis does not have one. At least not right now, unless they're building a soccer stadium that can, they can move and reconfigure. But yeah, I don't see it happening. Dave, what do you think?
If the CFL, if that was brought up to get that 10th team to round it out, and I could see them tracking the UFL progress in St. Louis. And I mean, remember too, is I don't know if they spend all that money that Stan Kroenke and the NFL gave them yet. So
that's right. I forgot about that.
They're sitting on I'm not sure if they're sitting on it anymore, but they received $800 million from the NFL and Kroenke when the Rams left. So there's been a lot of talk of how they're using that. I'm assuming they're probably used a lot of it, but that's found money. So I mean, I could see them. I could see them maybe not building a new facility, but I could see them spending some money to retrofit that. It's got more than enough seats. If they took out some seats to make the field fit, I mean, like I said, it's wild speculation, but that would be it seems to be a logical spot to look for a 10th team if it doesn't happen in Canada.
I know personally, I'd rather see a team in Halifax or Quebec City than go to the States. That's just me.
I agree. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, me too. I think they need to grow the game in Canada, period.
Yeah. But the problem is they've been wanting to do this. They've been talking about a team in the Maritimes for decades. I can remember them talking about the Atlantic Schooners years and years and years ago. I can remember in 2014, 2015, when the Red Blacks came back in, the way that the city of Ottawa had revitalized that whole area around the stadium, putting restaurants and bars all around it and making it a kind of a place to be. And the people from the Maritimes in Halifax looking at that and saying, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. And I mean, they were talking about building an area, modeling it exactly the way that Ottawa had built their area around the stadium. And I remember as a kid, when none of that was there, it was just pavement. It was all just pavement. And but Ottawa's a funny city that way. I mean, you've got the residents around the stadium where the stadium is. It's a very nice part of town, and they don't like having all the noise and all the traffic and everything on game days. It's like, like Thurston Howell III saying, "Good heavens, love you, Yale man." It's and that's how it is. It's a funny place. It is a funny place, to quote somebody from the Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
And with Quebec City, though, do you think Quebec City has a better shot of
I think at this point, right now, yes, I believe they do. I believe they do. The way that, like I said, football has grown in the last 25 years, 30 years. I believe that there could easily be a team in Quebec, just as easily as there could be in Halifax right now.
And what about London too? Does that?
I remember talk about London. I can remember talk about London about 50 years ago, expanding to London, and it was a very, very real prospect at that time. But I haven't heard much about London in the last few decades. Really, yeah. I mean, and that may just be my fault. That may just be me not having my ear out enough. But I remember London more in the early 70s than I do anything in the 2000s.
Right, and then I was going to even suggest Windsor, because drawing on that whole Detroit area. I mean, Windsor is part of a major metropolitan area, but obviously with at least right now, with the success of the Lions, I mean, nobody's going to attend a CFL game, or at least give a whole lot of attention to the CFL in Detroit when you've got a Lions team that, hopefully next year, gets over the hump and makes it to the Super Bowl.
Well, it would be a nice thing, and if they could have somebody on the sidelines next to Dan Campbell saying, "Kick a field goal."
Now, looking at Halifax and looking at Quebec City, is it ownership and facilities? Is there any? I know they want to set up the stands in Halifax and do some things like that. But is it really whatever? If it's one of those two cities, it's getting it all. It's getting a stadium built, getting an owner.
I think it's a very, very similar situation to baseball in Montreal again. And until they get a real stadium downtown in Montreal,
Yep.
you'll never see baseball in Montreal again. And it's the same thing, I think, in Halifax. I mean, they don't even have they have universities, but every time they do the kind of the CFL, they play a game out there. They've got to put temporary seats up at a college stadium just to get it to 10,000 ish. But I mean, the people love it. The people have fun, but it's once a year, and for 10 dates a year or 9 dates a year, or whatever. Would they be able to have the same enthusiasm? That's a question. That's a good question, but they need a good place that'll hold 25,000 people.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, Howie, as we're wanted to wrap everything up. Let's go back to free agency. Let's talk where we're. Is
that what the topic was? I forgot.
That's what the topic. When we start out, go ahead, Dave.
I have one question. I have one more. My own question, just going for my notes is. Howie, what do you think of Toronto West is going to do, being the Edmonton Elks with McLeod, Bethel Thompson, Gittins? Like it seems like, hey, you know what? If you're from Toronto and you live in Edmonton, we have your favorite Argos playing this year.
One of the best kick returners in the league, Javon Leake, who played for the Argos last year, is out in Edmonton now. Boris Beatty, who has a 65-yard leg easily, is out in Edmonton now. It's like I personally, having grown up with Edmonton being this juggernaut that was unbeatable. When I was younger, I would love to see Edmonton regain that again. And I would love to see the fans of Edmonton just develop that enthusiasm again. I mean, Jed Roberts is a guy who played at Edmonton for 13 years. And I had him on the Sports Lunatics show in 2023. And just an amazing guy. And from everything, I mean, just talking to him for 45 minutes, it got me fired up about Edmonton football. I would love to see Edmonton football revived and have a resurgence in 2024, make the playoffs and do some damage. I'd love to see it.
And see that stadium packed.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. If not packed, at least packed up to a certain level so that the TV cameras don't see empty seats when the ball's being thrown or kicked or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's just wild looking at free agency. And I'm like, Eugene Lewis might not even be considered their number one receiver anymore.
Well, how old is he now?
Well, yeah, that plays into it as well. But it just seems like he's 30.
It feels like he's been around the CFL forever. It just feels like that. But I mean, there's a lot of guys like that too that I've been watching them, and I feel like I've been watching them since I was 9 years old, but I haven't really. It's just
the pandemic. The pandemic feels like it added 10 years to everybody.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It feels like it added. I saw something came up in my Facebook memories today, and it's me sitting behind a desk of the Ultimate Sports Quiz, and I said, "Oh my God!" First of all, my tie looks like something Jerry Seinfeld would have worn in 1992, but it feels like we've all grown old in a hurry.
Yeah, well, it's phically yes, but mentally, nah. We're all.
No, you're absolutely right.
We're all.
Something we were talking about last week, all being 12 years old again. I brought that up today when I was getting the staples removed from my hip. With the nurses that were there, and one of the nurses looked at me and said, "That's a wonderful way to look at things." I said, "Yeah, let's all be 12 years old again."
I tell you what, man. I live in Japan. Japan is growing old, so when we go out. I mean, my wife and I, we're still young compared to, this country's aging quickly, and it's doing it, but that's what the great thing about sports is. It keeps us, forever young. And I know the Mexican league, the LFA, is starting play here very shortly. And I'm geared up like a 10-year-old for this league because this is the first, at least for me personally, this is the first spring where my head's not spinning like atop, where I'm not stressing out about life, or I'm not stressing out about a lot of things. I'm settled in Japan. I can focus in on the spring game. I know last year, Dave and I, that's how Dave and I got to be good friends, is doing our little XFL show covering the media. But even then, I really didn't have a whole lot of time, because I was still settling in. But this year I got the LFA. Dave and I know we're going to be launching our little Gridiron Mexico podcast, probably starting the week after next, or probably next week, but we'll see. It's in the works. But I'm genuinely excited, not only about, the LFA starting, because how have you watched any of those teams or any of those games?
No, I haven't. My focus here, it's February, and we're getting into the run for the hockey playoffs now. So, I mean, I've been watching hockey every night, and of course, one of the things that's also on right now is the women's Canadian curling championships. And I know that's not a big deal anywhere else but here. But I mean, no, and I'm serious about that. I mean,
I know. I agree with you. Yeah.
I know it's one of those things that when I'm at home at this time of the year, I'll sit down with my mom and we'll watch it together. And the other night I watched an NHL game, and then I turned over to the end of the Scotties, which is the women's championships. And I thought of my mom, and my mom's 87 now. And I thought of my mom, and I posted a thing on Facebook saying, I wish I was there right now so I could sit there with my mom and watch the end of the Scotties. And, so it's just one of those things that it's a family thing, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. Well, there's so much sport, but the LFA, all their games are going to be on YouTube. So watching it, not going to be an issue. You don't have to really search for it. You just go to YouTube and watch the games. And then we got the CFL coming up. I mean, really, the CFL season's coming up quicker. I mean, soon. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things you were talking about YouTube and stuff like that. Now, the CFL has come up with streaming options for people, because one of the things I used to hear from people all the time, younger people who aren't addicted to the cable on their TV or anything like that, is, why can't I watch it if I don't have cable? Well, now there are all kinds of different options for people to watch CFL games, just like you said, Greg, with the LFA. There are ways for people to watch the CFL now that they didn't have before. Younger people can get more engaged with the CFL that way, because it's easier for them not to watch the games without having cable.
Right. Well, and everybody watches stuff on, everybody watches stuff on their phones.
Exactly.
I mean, we're, just even doing this. I mean, everything. The world is, the world went from being on cable, from antenna to cable, and now everything's streaming.
Yeah.
So it's just an amazing world we live in. And but going back to free agency, we still have a lot of people that have not signed yet.
Yes.
Who do we have left that has not been signed, and when does free agency close here? Because there's a couple names on there that still have not signed, and I'm a BC Lions fan, and there's a lucky 7 there that
yes.
I don't know if they're staying or going.
Lucky Whitehead. There's a guy in Ottawa, Sherrod Baltimore, who's a DB that has been a big cog in their defense over the last few years, and he's a fan favorite as well. And I can't see him going unsigned. I saw Greg Ellingson as a free agent. Now, I mean, I know he's getting up there in age now, but he's a guy who can get you some valuable yards when you need it. He's a great route runner. If not, he's not the fastest guy, but he's a great route runner, and he can. He can. Those are two guys that he came to my mind. But Lucky Whitehead, of course, is a huge name.
And Dave, anybody else that out there? Like
I said, the biggest one for me is Lucky Whitehead, is where he's going to go, because that's like there's some good players out there, definitely, because you're going to offer some offensive linemen, some secondary defensive players. But if you're looking to still make a move or make a play, or if you're a team that's out there looking to grab that one more piece, instead of trying to go through the draft and try and do this and try and do that and try and piecemeal something, that's why I think is the biggest prize left. But there's only 9 teams, and he's probably not going to re-sign with the options available. Tim, it's really Calgary. You look at the options who are out there. It's I can see why he's waiting. I can see
the problem with waiting too is that with CFL free agency the way it is, the amount of money just goes squeezes and squeezes and squeezes the closer you get to the end of free agency. And so, will there be money left to sign a guy like Lucky Whitehead?
True, 100%.
And I mentioned earlier that I had asked Don Landry in his talks with Tim White, how close Ottawa was to Hamilton's offer, and he messaged me back and he said, "Thanks, Tim's a great guy to speak with. No, I don't have specifics on Ottawa's offer, so that's all I can tell you right now."
But I'm curious too with Whitehead's case too. When I brought up earlier about that mysterious marketing money piece, if he could be sitting on a couple offers and his agent going, "Can you get me 25,000 more for this or that?" Like when you brought up Chad Kelly, they restructured his, and a lot of his original deal was that marketing money that technically they don't have to give him. It's one of those things where there's a minimum they have to spend, no ceiling. So they can go, "We'll give you $200,000, and it's up to them to actually give it to you or not." So I'm curious too if there's some offers on the table for some of these players, and they're just trying, "Okay, you're gonna give me 25. Who can give me 30?" Like it just wander along and see where that it might be $175,000 a year, but $245 after the incentives of the marketing money, and see who can find enough. I'm gonna Canadian Tire or Tim Hortons money floating around that they can take out of this piece of the budget and put into this piece of the budget. Because I'll be honest, in my days working in minor league hockey, we had one of our minority owners wanted to sign a career journeyman minor league player, and he went to the owner and said, "Look, I will pay for his salary.
Wow,
sign him, and I will write the check to have him here because he's a friend of mine. And he was a really good player. So I mean, I'm not gonna. It was a great decision because he led the team in scoring. It was a great move, but it was one of those things where being an affiliate of the Buffalo Sabres, the old thing you had. Well, years ago, you had 5 or 6 veterans that you could bring in, and once you get to a certain number, you can, and you have a but. He goes, "Nope, I want him. I will gladly write a check for him." So curious if that is the case with some of the owners as well. It's like, we'll see what you can get, and then we'll supplement it over here with the rest.
One of the things that's always been a huge source of frustration, not just for me, but for a lot of people, has been the coaching cap, which I would love to see the CFL scrap that and just pay the coaches and pay the front office people whatever you want to pay them. It doesn't make any sense for me that there's a coaching cap. But
what is the cap? Is it where are they capped out at?
I don't know the actual number.
Okay.
But I know that it does prevent a lot of teams from getting the people that they want to get in certain positions. But then I look at the Red Blacks.
It's based on the whole staff, right, Howie? Is that how it is?
I believe so. Yeah. But I look at Ottawa's staff this year, and I know how they used to get by with a head coach, an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator, and now they've got 9 coaches. So I mean, they're doing it somehow in Ottawa.
Well, it's yeah, I did not know that there was I probably should have known that, but I didn't realize that there was a significant cap on the amount of money paid to the coaches.
Yeah, it's a huge source of frustration for a lot of fans and a lot of people in the game as well.
Wow. And I'm trying to think here, what other topics on the CFL? Any topics that I've kind of missed?
There was something that came out tonight right before we went to air. There was a story that came out in Toronto, and it's not a good news story. It's a story about strength and conditioning coach, a female strength and conditioning coach in Toronto, Rick Westhead, who has tremendous sources, and he's the guy that blew the lid off of the story about the junior hockey players in London in 2018. But he says that Chad Kelly sexually harassed the female strength and conditioning coach, and when she went to the assistant GM, he said, "You're opening a can of worms that you should not be opening." And so now I don't know any more than that. That was right before we went on the air. But I'm sure we'll hear more of that in the future.
Yeah, and that's not good. I mean, that's just not good.
No.
It's just not good.
No.
And Dave, anything else that I any other CFL topics before we get off air here?
No, it was good talk. Good job. It's fun, gentlemen.
Yeah. And it's Howie. Well, we didn't talk about your book. I know we talked about your book last week, but for those who've not seen or heard the last episode, tell everybody about your book.
Well, I have 2 books out in 2023, Crazy Days and Wild Nights and More Crazy Days and Wild Nights. Both of them, I mean, I'm a sports history guy. The stories in the books are sports history, but they have a twist in them. And usually in most of the stories that I've in both books, there's something unforeseen, unplanned for that happens that forces the principals in the stories to have to deal with them for a period of time, possibly the rest of their career or the rest of their lives in some cases. Some of the stories are sad. Some of the stories are violent. Some of the stories are hilarious. But they are stories that what people tell me, they're loving the stories that they're reading. This week, I've had a number of people message me through social media saying, how can I get a signed copy? I sent out a copy to South Carolina the other day. Before we came on the air, there was a guy I believe he's in Peoria, Illinois, and he wants a copy. And he said he's mailing me a check. It's that kind of thing where, get the book on Amazon. That's the best place to get it. If you have Prime, it'll be at your place in a day or a day and a half. But if you want to message me on social media, if you want a signed copy, we can figure out a way to get you a copy as well.
Sounds good. And how can everybody find you on social media and with the Sports Lunatic Show?
Well,
we didn't even get to that. Happy anniversary for the Sports Lunatic Show.
That's right. It's our 4th anniversary, today. And our very first episode was about something else that happened on this date in sports history. It was about the Miracle on Ice. Our first show was on this date in 2020. It was the 40th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. That episode, it's a very subdued episode compared to the way we do our shows today. But that episode is available. You can listen to it on Apple's podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. Just scroll down and you'll see it'll say our first episode. And it's about that. But also the sportslunatics.com. You can find a whole bunch of material there. There's new material going up pretty much every day. We just posted a piece that we did yesterday on the 50th anniversary of the passing of Tim Horton. Dave, you remember that. I remember that. I was 14 years old at that time, and I was over at a friend's place when we heard the news. And back then, the news was transmitted a lot differently than it is today. It took time for stories to make it out to different places. And by the time we heard it, it was the next morning. And I remember looking at my buddy John Hughes, and we looked at each other just in shocked silence that Tim Horton was gone. And I think of him when he played with the Leafs. Can you imagine a Leafs defense pairing of Tim Horton and Borja Salming together? Those two guys, they're strong like oxes. And there's a Tim Horton story that I heard, and he was in a hotel on a road trip, and he put some money into a Coke machine or a pop machine on his floor. And he went down to the front desk to say that, like, the pop machine didn't give me my pop. And they said, well, there's nothing I can do about it right now, but I'll look at it, when I get a chance to look at the machine. Tim Horton went up to his floor, picked up the pop machine, put it in the elevator, carried it down to the lobby, and carried it out to the front lobby, the front of the guy. He was that strong. And he said, here's the machine. It won't give me my pop. And that's how strong Tim Horton was. When he opened his first Tim Hortons restaurant, the donut shops that everybody knows in Canada and in parts of the U.S., his first one was in Hamilton, and he was playing for the Leafs at the time, and he convinced 5 of the Leafs teammates to go out to the restaurant to sign autographs, and he promised each of them $25. And at the end of the little segment of time, he was paying each guy $25, and he got to Johnny Bower, and he didn't have $25 to give to Johnny Bower. He says, I promise I'll give it to you tomorrow morning when we have our morning skate. So the guys get to the arena. Johnny Bower gets to his stall in the dressing room, and he sees there's $25 worth of donuts all stacked up in his stall. And he says, Tim, get these out of here. Punch Imlach's going to think I'm just a donut eating pig. These are the stories of Tim Horton that go around. Tim Horton's 50th anniversary of his passing yesterday. our latest piece up on thesportslunatics.com is there.
And I'll definitely be putting all.
It was a great episode, Howie. You and Sean, great episode. It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We got the YouTube version up on thesportslunatics.com right now, so check that out.
And hopefully next time we sit down and talk, we can bring Sean on too.
Absolutely. He hosts the trivia nights on Thursday nights, so that's the reason he can't be here tonight or last week. But it's a great source of fun for him. It's a great source of fun for him too, hosting those trivia nights. But that's why he's not here on Thursday nights.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely, as we march through, towards the start of the CFL season, we'll figure something out to get all four of us on screen here.
Sure.
And so with that said, I'm going to sign off here for everybody who ends up watching, because we're doing a live stream right now, but this is going to be on the YouTube. If you look for Gridiron America on YouTube, that's where you can find it. There's going to be we have a Facebook page, From the 55-Yard Line that's our Facebook page, but you can also find the podcast itself at fromthe55yardline.ca, and that's on the Sports History Network. And Dave and I, like I said, we've been doing weekly shows here, so it's always good to sit down and talk sports. So, Howie, obviously, you're now an unofficial part of the team. So hopefully, and how's the recovery going? I know how soon before you get back on the field to play?
That's a good question. I feel like I'm walking around like Igor on Young Frankenstein right now. But one of the nurses at the hospital today said, you're walking pretty well for a guy who had a hip replacement 2 weeks ago. So I'll take whatever I can get that way. I don't feel like I'm walking that well, but she thought I was walking well. So anyway, I just and I wanted to say thanks to you guys for having me on tonight. It's great fun coming on with you guys, and always fun to talk about the CFL and whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, and we got to do more of this too, because with CFL season approaching, and we got a lot of football in the next few months with the LFA, the UFL, the CFL, and that's before we even start talking NFL. But lastly too, we've got the CFL. When does the CFL draft come? That's coming up quick too.
It is coming up. I know training camps will be open. It feels like it's like we're already at the end of February almost, and I just can't believe it. But training camps will be open probably at the beginning of May, and the season will be starting in June. And it's coming on us really fast. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, just how quick. I mean, the seasons are changing. I know next week I just got the alerts. The Japanese baseball season, spring training games are going to be on TV. So. Yeah, it's quickly going from winter into spring here, so it's gonna be a fun spring, I think.
It just got reported today. It got reported today that Hyunjin Ryu, who was pitching for the Toronto Blue Jays for the last few years, has signed with a team in the KBO, the Korean baseball organization. So, he's going to be there.
The richest deal ever, wasn't it? Like he got paid a lot of money to go back.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, a guy of his stature, and he could still pitch in Major League Baseball. So, for him to be able to go back there, it's good for him and good for the league. I hope they can recoup all that.
Well, it's funny because the Koreans have got to keep pace with the Japanese when it comes to baseball, because last year in the World Baseball Classic, Korea lost to Japan yet again. So there's a lot of national pride that goes on with baseball on this side of the world. And, Dave and I remember last year, Dave and I were sitting down we were basically watching the World Baseball Classic together and watching Japan, beat the USA. And it's just, most of the country was watching the game. And I know back in the States and back in Canada, people don't watch baseball like they used to.
Well, I was at my mom's place. that night, and I can remember watching, Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, and that showdown to end that game. It was absolutely riveting.
Well, I tell you what, the Major League Baseball, if they have financial problems, they can just sell this place. It's like printing money here with Shohei Ohtani stuff.
Oh, I'm
It's
sure.
everywhere. Everybody's a Dodgers fan. They used to be Angels fans. Now they're Dodger fans.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law the other day is like, you're going to basically implied, are you going to root for the Dodgers? I'm like, no, I'm a Cub fan. Once you grow up with the team, you don't let it go, especially for the Dodgers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know I have a friend who is a diehard Dodger hater. And I mean, I grew up liking the Dodgers. I remember when I was a kid, I was a Montreal Expos fan to start. And then I looked enviously around baseball at teams like the Reds, and the Big Red Machine and the Dodgers and the Pittsburgh Pirates, who were all these strong teams. And my poor Expos didn't start to gain respectability until Tony Perez was traded to Montreal in the winter of 76 and going into 77. And from there, they went to 77, 78, 79. 79, I think they won 90 some games, and they finished a game and a half behind Pittsburgh, the We Are Family Pittsburgh Pirates that year. And they were that close. And that 79 Expos team is one of the best Expos teams I think they've ever put on the field.
Yeah, I remember that 79 season well. I was like 12 years old. And I'm trying to think, what year was it that Pete Rose played for the Expos? Howie, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Were you able to hear that? He got his 4,000th hit as a member of the Expos.
No, I didn't hear it. We had a glitch in a glitch in the matrix here.
I believe it was 1980. But yeah, Pete Rose got his 4,000th hit as a Montreal Expo.
Okay, yeah, because I remember he had basically, or did he play in '84? Now that I'm thinking about it,
it was '84 with the Expos.
Yeah, you're right. It was '84.
And the reason why.
It was after they had made their runs in 80 and 81 and 82. You're right. It was 84.
Because my most memorable Montreal Expos moment, and it's a limited selection is really of one. I was at Wrigley Field with my dad. It was my birthday. It was a present for my birthday, and that was the year the Cubs won the division. And Pete Rose was pinch hitting, and he hit the ball. It was a line drive, which bounced off of, it might have been Lee Smith.
Oh.
And, it was an out, it was caught for an out and everything. Fast forward 40 years later, during they had a celebration on WGN of Wrigley Field and famous moments. I'll be damned if they didn't show that play. And I'm like all excited, showing my wife. I go, I was at that game, and Marco's like, well, that's nice. So, but that's my most favorite Montreal Expos moment, was that moment. Wow. I was actually watching that. But it's we all have our own personal baseball moments. So we do. How about you, Dave? Anything? Because anybody who's listening to the audio is not seeing the fact that Dave is wearing a Montreal Expos hat.
Yes, and I love that hat, by the way.
This is my fourth one. My first one I got was I was in Montreal the summer before my daughter was born. So this is 2017, and I went into 15 different stores in Montreal looking for an Expos hat.
Really?
Dude, I was shocked it was that hard to find. Like, we were walking right in downtown Montreal, like in every single shop, just doing the touristy thing, just walking in. Expos hat, like that's like, I finally found one. I was like, I'm just gonna take it. I just grabbed it. I'm like, I gotta get it. So it's nice that MLB has brought it back to be able to get more of them, because for a while it was really hard to get. I had an old school blue, the old full blue with the logo when I was a kid growing up, but it's hard to it was really hard to find for a long time.
Well, it's funny you should mention it.
Oh, I remember when we were kids. When the Expos came in '69, there was a grocery store that was Montreal based. It was called Steinberg's, and we had one in Ottawa, not far from where we lived. And my mom would do her groceries there every Friday night. And we demanded that she go to Steinberg's because they had all the Expos merchandise. Well, they didn't have a lot, but you could get the plastic batting helmets, the souvenir batting helmets. And I remember seeing somebody with the shiny blue Expos jacket, and I thought, Yeah, that in 1969, 1970, that was something that was like having the precious, the ring, the precious, precious.
Well, it's funny, you're talking about looking high and low for Expos merchandise. When we were in Montreal last year, it was right before we went to Canada. We spent 7 days in Canada before we hopped on a plane and moved over here. But going into, especially in the old city, in the old quarter, there was Montreal Expo stuff everywhere. I
Really?
was amazed, and I didn't buy any Expo stuff, though I wanted to, but I got gently talked out of it because there was a lot there. But I was looking for, and this is kind of tying in with the CFL, but I was looking for anything Montreal Alouettes.
Oh,
I found I couldn't find anything. I mean, there was one shop that sold my favorite style, those relaxed fit caps with the current Montreal Alouettes logo. And then there was another shop I found obscure back in the back with dust on it, stuff with the old logo with
yes.
After they came up from Baltimore.
Yes.
But there was nothing other than that. So it's like, for those, it was disheartening to see there was just no Alouette stuff, so, how about, is it the same in Ottawa? Is it the same in Toronto? Can you find that stuff? Because even in Ottawa, I couldn't find Red Black stuff.
Really? Did you go to the Red Black shop? There's a Red Black shop at Lansdowne Park.
Okay, no, I know we never made it down to Lansdowne Park, but I was over by Parliament, and I didn't see anything.
It depends on where you go, but I mean, like I say, Ottawa's a funny place. But if you go, I took my son to the shop one time. This is a few years ago. It was after the 2017 Grey Cup, so it was going into 2018, and for some reason, we were walking around and we were close to the field. We stopped at the giant statue of Frank Clare, and I put my program up on the thing to help him either tie up something or do something. Forgot the program there. The next year we went to the shop and told them that we bought a few things. They gave us another program from the game.
Oh, but nice.
It's not the same thing, but it's something. And I mean, that's one of my pet peeves now in a lot of sports venues is that there are no programs anymore. There are no tickets anywhere anymore either. Right. It's all on your phone.
Yeah. And the CFL has really never done a great job of marketing itself, which has always been frustrating. And I know it's frustrating, up there, and just as frustrating for people living outside of Canada, just to get the swag. I mean, I don't have. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to have a ton of CFL stuff. I mean, in the back, I've got a ton of CFL mini helmets.
Yes,
but those were all purchased. Those all came from the States. But yeah, it's just frustrating as a CFL fan that and that'll probably be a topic for another show that we do, is just the way the CFL obviously needs to get into the third century getting into the third decade of the 21st century,
or into the 21st century would be good too.
Yeah, just something to market it and get the younger fans excited about it, including maybe a CFL add-on for man football, something.
Yeah, but. I bought tickets for a Red Blacks game through the website back in 2014, and I get emails all the time still, and they still send me emails for when the Red Blacks are having their team equipment sale, because they can't use equipment from one year to the next. It just loses it. So I have a Red Blacks helmet. I have a couple of practice jerseys as well that I bought one time when my son and I were there in Ottawa on the day of the sale, and we lined up, and by the time we got into the room to get stuff, there wasn't much left, but we got, like I said, we got a helmet and a couple of practice jerseys. And I mean, it doesn't matter to me who they are. It's just the fact that they've got the CFL logo on the yoke. Right. And and the Red Blacks helmet is a real Red Blacks helmet. Nigel Romick wore it in 2015. So, I mean, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. I know when I was in Quebec City in 2002, there was a lot of shops, sold a lot of NFL stuff. And this was right after the Alouettes, I think, won the Grey Cup that year. And I found one Alouettes jersey. that was it. So
I've never been a fan of the Alouettes' new logos. I mean, from I don't know 2000 on. I mean, but the thing is, I have a memory that goes back to, the 60s of the Alouettes, and when they wore red jerseys with similar to the Philadelphia Eagles, except it was a red leaf on the white helmet, and or red wing, sorry, on the white helmet. And I mean, then they went to a green jersey with a stylized A that was a bird's head, and then just from there, then they had the triangle with the MA on it, and it just go back to all that. And I found those are a lot more imaginative, or a lot more, I guess, magnetic or compelling than the new stuff is, to me anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it's much like, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Dave, every now and then when we do a podcast, Dave will pop up with his creamsicle Buccaneers hat with the old logo.
And rightly so.
Yeah. That's the way that's, whether, I love the old logos, love the old school. Some of the, like right now with Toronto, they've gone to the light blue is kind of their primary color.
Yeah.
And that's a great look.
Personally, I would love to see them go back to the 70s, the 1971 Joe Theismann style jersey, the dark blue with the white numbers and the light blue and white stripes on the arm. That to me was the most beautiful Toronto Argonaut uniform that ever was.
Well, on that note, we will wrap up the fashion segment of our podcast. And listen, everybody who's tuning in, and if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you very much for stopping by to give us a watch. And we're going to be I think a couple things here as we're wrapping up here. Number one, no blue screen of death. So this seemed to work well. Second of all, we've got all three of us here in the screen, which I did not have using Zoom on the last one that we did. So I think StreamYard might be the keeper here, and unless I see anything different, because doing these video things, everybody's been doing them, and people have been saying to me, "Hey, you got to do the video. You got to do the video. You got to do the video." Well, I think this might be the route to go, because it's simple. I can put a logo. Let's see, right up there. I can put the logo right up there where the duck is, and that's all I really need to do. Now I just need to figure out how to do a nice fancy intro like some of these other guys do with their video cast, and I think we will be set. So part of the learning curve. So I'm actually farther along in this learning how to do this video stuff than I thought I would be about 2 weeks ago. So all right. With all that said, hey, thank you very much for everybody who is listening and watching. And we will be back next week. Don't know what our topic's going to be. Hopefully we'll have our plan is to bring Fran back to do around the league segment. And, everybody and Howie, we'll be talking more CFL football here as we kind of go along. Because especially after the draft, once after the draft, I know we're definitely going to be doing a post-draft show. So, okay. Well, with all that said, on my part, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will be talking to you and seeing you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
One and all we fight to see the cup run back to our hometown. We This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.